Hello my dear students, welcome to my channel Study of Philosophy. In this video, I shall explain the last part of the Unit 1 of HS Second Year Logic and Philosophy. I shall explain in this part scientific induction, unscientific induction, analogy, good analogy and bad analogy. So let's get started. Now I shall explain the relation between scientific and unscientific induction. But before my explanation, students, I just want to tell you one important thing, that whenever a question comes about the relation between two terms, first of all, you have to give the definition of each term with examples. Then the similarity and differences. Because I notice that some students write only the differences between terms, not the other things, while writing the answers about the relation between two terms. Now, what is the relation? What is scientific induction? Scientific induction is the establishment of a general real proposition based on observation of particular instances and in reliance on the principle of uniformity of nature and the law of causation. One example of scientific induction is that all men are mortal. What is unscientific induction? Unscientific induction is the establishment of a general real proposition on the ground of mere uncontradicted experience without any attempt at establishing a causal connection. For example, all crows are black. In my previous part, I have already explained about what is scientific induction and what is unscientific induction. Now the similarities between scientific and unscientific induction. Scientific and unscientific induction are similar in respect of their starting point and also in respect of their conclusions. First, the aim of scientific induction is to establish a general real proposition. The aim of unscientific induction also is to establish a general real proposition. Thus, both scientific and unscientific induction establish a general real proposition as their conclusions. Secondly, to fulfill this aim, both scientific and unscientific induction start with the observation of particular instances. The conclusion of induction, we know that the conclusion of induction must be formally as well as materially true. To make the conclusion materially true, scientific induction establishes it on the basis of observation of facts of experience. On the other hand, unscientific induction also establishes its conclusion on the basis of observation of particular facts of experience or particular instances. So, both scientific and unscientific induction start their journey of establishing a general real proposition in a similar way. In both scientific and unscientific induction, there is inductive leap. So, both are the two forms of induction proper. So, what are the differences between scientific and unscientific induction? Scientific induction is based on two kinds of observation. Number one, simple observation, and number two, experiment. But unscientific induction is based on only simple observation and not on experiment. So I shall give you a detailed explanation of these two terms, that is simple observation and experiment, in the second unit, that is grounds of induction. Secondly, scientific induction is grounded on the principle of the uniformity of nature and the law of causation, whereas unscientific induction is grounded on mere uncontradicted experience. Thirdly, the process of scientific induction is complex. Why it is complex? Because it involves observation, formation of hypothesis, generalization, verification, etc. But the process of unscientific induction is simple. Lastly, the conclusion of scientific induction is always certain, because scientific induction is always based on the law of causation. But the conclusion of unscientific induction is always probable, as there is no attempt to establish a causal connection in unscientific induction. Now I shall explain what is analogy, that is the last topic of the first unit. Different logicians have defined analogy in different ways. From all this, it appears that analogy is a kind of induction proper in which, on the basis of observation of similarity in some respects between two things, it is inferred that since one of them has a further quality, the other two has the same quality. So in analogy, we first observe that two different things resemble each other in some respect. Secondly, one of them possesses a further quality, and so it is inferred on the ground of previous resemblance that the other thing also possesses that same quality. I have given here two examples. One is symbolic example and the other is concrete example. So what is the symbolic example? A and B are similar in respect of X, Y and Z. A further possesses the property M, therefore B also possesses the property M. In the concrete example, Mars resembles the Earth in certain respects, namely in being a planet, possessing similar atmosphere, land, temperature, etc., revolving round the sun. The Earth further possesses the property of being inhabited. Therefore, Mars also possesses the property of being inhabited. If we analyze the nature of analogical reasoning or analogy, then we find certain characteristics of it. Number one, analogy is a kind of inference from particular to particular. That means in analogy, we proceed from a particular proposition to another particular proposition and not from particular to general proposition, as we do in the case of scientific and unscientific induction. Secondly, analogy is based on imperfect similarity. In analogy, what we do? In analogy, two instances are observed. and it is found that they are similar in certain respect, and in one a further property is present, but whether that property is present in the other or not, we don't know. Then on the ground of the similarity observed by us between these two instances, it is inferred that the property is present in the second one also. So, the ground of passing from the known to the unknown in analogy is similarity, and that similarity is imperfect similarity and not perfect one, because all the points of similarity between the two instances cannot be known by us, as we have seen in the previous examples that I have given. So, the third characteristics of analogy is that the conclusion drawn by analogy is always probable. Why the conclusion is always probable? Because analogy is not based on causal connection. And lastly, in analogy, there is inductive leap. Now I shall explain the different kinds of analogy. So, on the basis of the importance of the points of similarity, analogy is divided into two kinds: good analogy and bad analogy. What is good analogy? Good analogy is one in which a conclusion is drawn from the presence of essential resemblance between two things. If we take the example of Mars and Earth, that is, Mars is inhabited like the Earth, in that case the resemblance between Mars and Earth is the essential resemblance. Secondly, what is bad analogy? A bad analogy is one in which the conclusion is drawn from superficial points of resemblance between two things. Bad analogy, it is also called as false analogy. For example, plants like man have birth, growth and decay. Man possesses intelligence, therefore we infer, or it is inferred, that plants also possess intelligence. But here the points of resemblance between plants and man, it is a superficial point of resemblance. So in case of good analogy, conclusion is drawn from essential points of resemblance, and in bad analogy, conclusion is drawn from superficial points of resemblance. That is the difference between good analogy and bad analogy. So that's all for today. Students, if you have any queries about the topic discussed, do leave a comment in the comment section, and please don't forget to subscribe my channel and click the bell icon so that you get a notification whenever I upload a new video.